Hello guys, welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to be reviewing probably one of my favourite Symbian phones, the Nokia N97 Mini. Now that's quite a controversial opinion because this phone, well the original N97 I guess was deemed as a failure for Nokia actually, in terms of software especially. But in this video I'm going to go into why I like this phone so much. Starting off with a look around, as you can see on the side we've got a micro USB port. This is actually the only way to charge the phone. There is no small Nokia proprietary pin, as there are or were on most Nokia Symbian phones. We've got the power slider here on the left side. Usually it's on the right side, but on this phone it's on the left. And then the stereo speakers, which I'll get to later. On the right we've got the volume buttons and the two-stage camera button. And then on the top we've got the power button and 3.5mm headphone jack. And then we don't have anything on the bottom except for a lanyard slot thing. So on the back we've got the Nokia N series logo. Apologies for the fingerprints. 5-megapixel autofocus camera with dual LED flash. The original N97 also had the same camera, but it was hidden behind a cover. So as you can see, that's sort of plastic all around here, but this cover is metal. On the original N97 that was plastic, I think, so this is quite a nice design. There's the cover, and then as you can see we have our removable micro SD card slot. You can see it just clicks in like that, and then the battery, which is the BL4D, same battery as the N8, and it fits in the same slot as the 808, which had the BV4D, which had a bigger capacity. But behind the battery, the SIM card slot is in this little tray in here. It's kind of awkward to get to, but it's quite nice. Put that back in. Excuse me. Opening the slider reveals the keyboard, which is a 3-row QWERTY keyboard. In this case it's actually not QWERTY, because this is, a German phone. It's actually a German keyboard layout. Now I have flashed this phone with different firmware, so the typing Z here actually types Y like it would in a normal QWERTY keyboard. So the keyboard's quite a nice keyboard. You can see a couple of marks there, which I'll get into later as well. But yeah, quite a nice mechanism, as you can see. And then you've got the call, hang up, and hang up keys, which are actually resistive as well as the screen, and then the menu button. So let's turn on the phone. The power button's at the top, and while we start up here, you can see the screen goes black. Now it is actually loading. It's just it sometimes does this when it loads, but the reason for this is, as you'll see in a second. If it'll load. There we go. As you can see, it's actually white text on a black background. Now you might know that this is not typical of Symbian, or this version of Symbian anyway, which is S60v5, and that's because I'm actually running custom firmware, which you'll see in a moment. So if I go into the menu here, as you can see, we've actually got bell icons from Symbian Bell, which is quite nice. So I'll show you the custom firmware I'm running actually. If I go into here and type this code, you can see that the firmware version is the latest version for this phone, and then the custom firmware version is called Bazara custom firmware version 4 Bell Edition, which is quite nice. So starting with the good things, as I already mentioned, the lovely metal design. It feels very premium. The phone actually feels like it's got a nice weight to it as well, which is very nice to know. It's not too heavy, but it's got sort of like an expensive feel to it, which is quite good. And I love the colour of the phone as well. This it's called Garnet. It's sort of like a coppery colour, bronze colour. It's absolutely lovely. I love it so much. Um, so next up we have the screen, which is a 3.2 inch TFT LCD. So not an AMOLED, but it's still a very good screen for an LCD. It's got very good colours, and it's quite bright as well. The touchscreen itself is resistive, which some people don't like, but it is actually quite a good resistive touchscreen. It's very easy to press, unlike older ones, so I'm hardly putting any pressure, just a tad bit more than a capacitive touchscreen. So that does mean it doesn't have multi-touch, but you've got the keyboard, so we'll come to like games and stuff with that later. What else do we have? So we have a good keyboard, as I mentioned. So if I go into new message and open the keyboard, there we go. So if I type something, anything, oh, there's an F in there. So the why is that not working? Oh, because it automatically capitalizes it, that's why. So, I can't remember if this is the actual sentence, but the keyboard is, what's typing twice? That's just me. It's quite nice, although it is a bit awkward to get used to because you have to remember that the spacebar is off to the right. But that's obviously so they can fit everything in. Over the lazy dog, I think it is. So the keyboard, it's not like, you can see the buttons are like, they hardly stick out at all. So they don't really have that much feel, but they are still nice to tap on. There we go. That's not actually the full stop. I don't know how to do the full stop actually. I can't remember. I guess this one? No. There we go. And then you can of course close it again. So what else do we have? So we have a good battery life. As you can see, I've got one bar missing there, but I have tested it myself. It's got a good battery life. And then we've also got 8 GB built into the phone. Now the original N97 had, I think, 32, which is like really insane. But 8 is still plenty for your needs. And then you of course have got that expandable storage via the micro SD card slot. I'm opening the wrong thing here, but I want to show you that I have 8 gigs. There we go. It doesn't actually tell you how much is in total, but yeah, I've got 8 GB in total. And then the final thing I wanted to talk about, that is a good thing, is the camera. So if I get my 6210, I will put a comparison up of like a camera on the 5800, which was nowhere near as good as this camera, and I'll put a comparison of that versus like a EDOF camera from like a Bell phone, I think, because that's probably reasonable. But you can see, I take a photo, the flash is quite bright as well. Obviously not as bright as the Xenon flash, but still does the job. So that's the photo there. Obviously I'll put up the photos, like overlay them. So that's all the good things about this phone. So there are plenty, and then there are of course a couple of disadvantages. You know, like no phone is perfect. So the first thing I wanted to talk about was I mentioned these little marks here. That's actually from sticky pads that used to be here. So like when you close the phone, it sort of like keeps it together. You can see on the back here. No, it's not it. The back here, there's like little sticky pad things. They're just like, they've sort of turned to mush and become sticky and got all over the phone, so that's not great. I was able to wash that off with like cleaning materials, but that's a problem with many Nokia slider phones, including the E7. So what else? As I mentioned, the 5800 earlier, with the camera not being as good. On the contrary, the 5800 has way better speakers than the N97. And even though the speakers on the N97 are like dual speakers, you can see there's two, they're still really terrible. Like, this 6210 has better speakers even with the single firing back speaker. They're like, the speakers are probably some of the worst I've heard, to be honest. They have literally no bass whatsoever, and they're really tinny. Probably comparable like to my O2 XDA exec, which also has dual speakers but are really bad. But it does have like the stereo widening feature, which is pretty good. Like, it still works because the phone has dual speakers, obviously. Definitely nowhere comparable to the 5800, which was a music phone, obviously, but still. What else do we have? Well, the slow. The phone was noted for having a slow user interface. Now, the N97 was worse apparently, but I don't know. Sometimes you can see, if you, as you can see there, when you rotate the screen, it's sort of slow. Especially when you start up the phone, it's like, it takes like 5 seconds maybe. Sometimes it's okay, but another thing is the RAM. There's about 128 megabytes, I think, which is probably not enough for this phone. If you run like a couple of games or something, it'll just die. Like, it'll just freeze and then close apps on you, and then blah blah blah. It's really annoying. So yeah, and then of course the last thing is that this phone is stuck on Series 60 version 5. So you can't get like apps from Bell or apps that require Qt, some version of Qt. I can't remember what version it is, like 4.07 brackets 4, I think. But yeah, whereas like Bell phones would be compatible with previous apps to a degree. But of course I have got the Bell looking icons, so that's quite nice. And then another advantage of Series 60 version 5 I'll come to now, which is the next section, which is emulators, which I love. So the first emulator I wanted to talk about, is StyleTop, which is a Palm OS emulator. If I open that here. So the reason that this is better on Series 60 version 5, or works best on Series 60 version 5, out of all the Symbian versions, I think UIQ3 actually had it as well, but out of the Series 60 versions, is that it works best because Series 60 version 3 phones don't have touchscreens, so you're stuck with a mouse pointer if you want to use StyleTop. Obviously this has a resistive touchscreen, which is reminiscent of Palm OS devices, as they also had resistive touchscreens. But Bell or Symbian 3 and up, I think, they have problems with StyleTop, with using the keyboard. There might be demos of it, actually no there won't be. I might put a demo up just showing that, but this will work because it's Series 60 version 5. But the keyboard, if you try and use the virtual keyboard on a Symbian 3 phone or up, it'll crash StyleTop. So obviously this one works fine. But yeah, I might put that up in another video. But this works very well. It's also faster than probably quite a few Series 60 version 3 devices, except for the E-series ones, like the E71, because it has like a faster processor than even this. But yeah, it works great. You've got apps, if I choose one here, like Dope Wars. It's quite a small area to work with, to be honest, but that's sort of emulating 320 by 320, which is actually what it's displaying here. As you can see, that's sort of like the 20 pixels on either side are not being used, because this is 360 by 640. But yeah, it works well. If you have a stylus, obviously, because the buttons are so small, it's easier to use a stylus to get precision. As you can see, not really playing here, but yeah, so that's StyleTop. If I quit this, and if I show you other emulators, so if I go into the menu here, as you can see, even the menu, like, it's loading. As you can see, it's showing the loading screen. That's because it closed the menu because it ran out of RAM. That might be just because StyleTop, I have a lot of apps in it, but still, you can see the lack of RAM here, and it's sort of laggy as you can see the interface. So these emulators here, VBag, VBoy, VNES, and VSUN, are all Series 60 version 3 emulators. So I mean, if I go into VBoy here and then open a random game, actually I should rotate the screen first, because that's where you get the keyboard, which is useful for playing games. As you can see, it's really really slow at some times, at some things even. If I open that, and then scroll down to Monopoly, it's just a random game. As you can see, the screen is garbled. Now, what I also wanted to show was the virtual key app, which sort of emulates, because this phone doesn't have a physical like left and right soft keys, and the Mini also doesn't have an OK button. You have to you can remap some of the buttons. So I've remapped shutter button to OK. So like if you press it in a bit, like the first stage of the shutter, and then R is the left soft key and I is the right soft key, and then WASD are mapped to those. You can set different configurations, which I've done for different emulators. But if I go back to VBoy, you can see the sound works. But what you have to do here is select the left or the right soft key, and then go down to graph, which is the display settings, and then put bitmap output, which makes it work. So any button to start, yeah. So I guess if I knew how to play this game, never mind. I guess this emulator works, but it if I remap the keys, it sort of forgets that key remap when I restart the game or the emulator, so I don't really use it. But I guess it sort of works. It doesn't work perfectly, obviously, but that's an option. But what I also have is if you want to know what that is, actually, that's called Pocket Lock. It's a proximity sensor lock, which is quite cool, but it does sometimes get in the way. So I actually have 3 Game Boy emulators on this phone. It's probably insane, but the second one is called GNU Boy. It is a good emulator, although it doesn't have sound. If you can see, if I click on the audio button, nothing happens. But if I load a ROM, as you can see, so there's Monopoly. You can see it works fine. I mean, you can't actually use the buttons on the keyboard to control it though, so that's a bit of a bummer. You have to use the on-screen controls. But it works fine, except there's no sound, which is quite interesting because the Game Boy Advance emulator actually did have sound, and that would be like more intensive. Actually, I'm kind of stupid here. You can remap the controls if I do this quickly. And then, yeah. So that will actually remap the controls, as you can see. Never mind. But yeah, there's no sound again, so it might not be ideal. So if I go into the final one which I have here, which is called Oh Boy. Now you'll see with this one, is that when I have this in portrait mode, as you can see, it's already in landscape mode, so that means when I put it in landscape mode, it also rotates at 90 degrees again. So that is a problem. So what I had to do is install an app that will rotate my phone, the phone screen. Sorry, it's not the right angle, but this will rotate the screen back to portrait again. So if I go back into Oh Boy, it'll be in well, landscape mode, which is still portrait mode, but you know. So I've had to make another configuration in Oh Boy, or sorry, virtual key, which is the second one, because I've had to change all the remapping or the keys, because to scroll up and down I had to use the left and right buttons, so scrolling down works better now, as you can see. So if the thing is about this emulator, actually, the controls, you can't remap the arrow keys, so you're stuck with the default arrow keys, but I also remap them to WASD anyway, so that's fine. As long as you figure out how to work virtual key, it's fine. So the menus are controlled with enter and backspace. So if I load Monopoly. Actually, you know what, I'll load Super Mario Brothers Deluxe. There was something I wanted to show you. So as you can see, it's in full screen. You can, actually no, it's not in full screen, but you can make it full screen. So as you can see, you can turn off that FPS counter, but I've got it's at 12 FPS, which really isn't impressive. And that is actually, if I set it up here, if I go into the menu and go to options, I've already got a frame skip of 4. If I set that to auto, which is default, you can see, well, it still shows like the same FPS, but if I actually go into a level and start moving, you can see it's very choppy. Now, if I show you on my Series 60 version 3 phone, I have the same emulator. This doesn't have the problem because I've turned rotation off. If I go into the same ROM, and as you can see, I've got the frame skip on auto. If I go back and select Super Mario Brothers Deluxe, as you can see, we've got a mighty 30 FPS, which is way more playable. With the frame skip on auto. If I can remember these controls. It's not as easy to play on this phone, obviously, because the controls are all on this side. As you can see, not choppy at all. Well, it is a bit choppy, but that might just be because of the screen, which isn't that high refresh rate. It sort of goes a bit. But the speaker's also better on this phone, which is quite funny. So that's really not impressive from the N97. I don't know why that is. I mean, this emulator I think was designed for Series 60 version 3, but it still works on S60 V5. So anyway, enough rambling. I mean, it works, I guess, if you as long as you have the frame skip on 4. It's fine. As you can see, the speakers aren't as good, but the controls are good. Like, you can set them up to whatever you want, basically. It's still choppy, but it's playable. If I set it to, yeah, I already set it to auto, but anyway, that's Game Boy. Enough of Game Boy. Going out of this. What else? NES. I'll just quickly go through like NES and whatever. So I'll go back to virtual key and select the first config again, and then go into NES. Actually, I need to rotate the screen. As you can see, it's not designed for S60 V5, but it still works with this keyboard. So if I load a ROM, Super Mario World, or Super Mario Brothers, sorry, and then if I, oh, I selected the wrong config? Oh, I might need to set it up. Has it deleted my config? It's deleted my config. I don't know why. Anyway, that might be a problem. I think these are actually, no, they're not switched. Anyway, I go back into that and then start the game. This emulator works fine, as you'll see. It's very loud. Actually, the A and B buttons are remapped to the wrong things in the menu. It's very loud. I forgot to mention in Oh Boy you can't change the volume for some reason. You probably can in this one, but you can see there's sort of elements over on that side. That's just because it's designed for S60v3. But I mean, it still works fine. It's pretty responsive and not really too laggy. Anyway, exiting out of this. So if I show you Game Boy Advance next, I guess. This is made by the same developer as GNU Boy, but it does have audio, which is good, which is what we want. So if I don't know what ROM this is in. Oh, it's in Mario Kart Super Circuit. There we go. There you can see. Also very responsive. So I think the developer of GNU Boy should have just put audio in. I think they just abandoned the project, really. I don't know why, but I'll just show you. This is actually quite an awkward game. Like, it does lag on a lot of emulators, so I'll show you it's not really lagging at all. You see, really fast. I have mapped these correctly anyway. Oh dear. Oh, it's because I know why it's not working. I need to run the key config again. There we go. That should work. Now, as you can see, it crashed there. If you the second time you load a ROM, it'll crash. I don't know why that is, but it just does. So it's reset the game there. So that might be an issue. You can load in save states though, which is good, but it's a bit of a glitch. It's a bit of a nuisance, but I mean you can still play the game fine. So I select that level again. There we go. The reason those arrow keepers weren't working actually was because I'd set up the controls for this emulator before I'd used Virtual Key, which had mapped the controls. So technically I could have just quit Virtual Key, but then I like to enable it when I'm playing games anyway, so that's GPSP. The name is actually misleading. You would think it's a PSP emulator, but it's actually Game Boy Advance. And then the final one of the Nintendo emulators is N97, which is also by the same developers. You can see the buttons are laid out the same way. It also has the same bug when you close a ROM, but I've set this one up. I think, as you can see, I've got Monopoly. It works fine as well. The sound is a bit weird, but I mean, it still works. Just doing random things, right? As you can see, it works fine. Really, no issues there. And then if I quit, how do I quit? How did I quit? I can't remember. Why did I quit? Huh. Oh, you just tap the sides. That's a really weird thing, but yeah, that works fine. So that's the end of the Nintendo emulators. Now on to another emulator, which is you can see I have Doom there. It doesn't work, unfortunately, but I do have Quake, which I'll show you now. I played in landscape. A lot of, well, you can play it in portrait on like in Series 60 version 3 phone with keypad, but like the N95, you can see it works well in landscape as well. Now you'll see a little icon flashing there. It's actually a RAM icon telling me I'm running out of RAM. I hardly ever get that on the N95, even though it has the same amount of RAM, so, or the N95 8GB. So that's a bit of a disappointment, but you can see I've got the controls mapped again. I'll turn the sound on here actually, to get the full experience. Where is it? Yeah, it's up. So if I load a new game, you can see because I've mapped the arrow keys to WASD, I can use both sets, because it's kind of awkward to press forward and left at the same time. So you can do up on that side and then right left on that side, which is quite cool. And then shooting can be done with that button there, as you can see, because OK is mapped to shooting. So there's sort of like a balance between the mapping in virtual key and the mapping within the app, which I've done to my preferences. So yeah, that works fine. I mean, you can see it speed wise, it's fine. Maybe it might lag a bit because of the RAM, lack of RAM, as you can see, but it's still playable, which is good. So, the next and second last emulator is actually just Java emulation. So, as you'll see, if I open, where is it? Oh, it's not in this folder. The game I wanted to show was, it's not in this folder either, called GTA Soviet Russia, which is actually a Carjack Streets remake. Now, as you can see, Symbian 60 version 5 and also Bell, like Symbian 3 and up, have like virtual controls, like the left and right soft key directions, and then those are like some numbers, I can't remember which ones. But as you can see, this game here requires you to press 5 to start. Now this emulates the D-pad, which doesn't, like you can also use 4, 2, 6 and 8 and 5 as a D-pad, but those aren't actually the 2, 4, 6, 8 and 5 buttons, so that doesn't work. So if I go into virtual key again, I've got a third. You can only have up to 3, I think. The third config is I set up for Java apps. If you want me to actually show you these configs, I can do it. I can link them in the description maybe. But this basically, I've set it up so that if I show you here, these 9 keys here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then 0, or sorry, hash, or star and hash, and then 0, and then left and right soft keys, and then WASD and the arrow buttons are mapped. So I think OK is also the shutter key again. So if I go out of that and go back to Carjack Streets, or GTA Soviet Russia, as you can see, so 5 is mapped to H. I press 5, it loads. So if I turn the volume on here, but there we go, and then soft keys again. So yeah, I mean, I guess that works. The cool thing about, or the thing about this game as well, is that because it's like a 2D sort of moving game, you can move diagonally if you press like 1, 3, 5 and 7. So if I do this and then press what would be 1, actually that one hasn't mapped properly, I don't think, but as you can see 3 moves diagonally, which is pretty cool. So yeah, that works fine, works well, except for of course the screen, which doesn't match the screen resolution, but you know, that's just it's just a thing, it's a cosmetic thing. So yeah, that's that, and then the final emulation, or final emulator I guess, I wanted to show you is, if I close virtual key here, actually you know what, I'm gonna set it back to the first config again. I haven't actually used this in this app yet, but anyway, if we go back into this menu, go into this app, which you may recognise. You'll see it in a second anyway. It loads landscape, so that's why I've rotated the phone. So you can see the UI is a bit slow, obviously, but so as you can see, I've loaded the app here, and you'll see that this is actually N-Gage. Now, the N97, the original one, was the only official, or the only Series 60 version 5 phone that officially got N-Gage, so that's why we have N-Gage on this phone. And this is another good thing about Series 60 version 5 over like 7.3 and off, is that they don't support N-Gage, so you can't play the games on those phones. But as you can see, if I load Star Wars, I guess, Now you'll actually see here that the phone is just crashed. Usually it like shows a little glitch on the screen. It hasn't done it this time, but um, and that's because the task manager I was running, you may have seen, is called JBack Taskman. And for some reason, when I have it running, the phone, like, it doesn't, Engage games don't load. I don't know why. It might just be like a permissions thing. I don't know. But the phone is frozen. Usually it shuts off here. Yeah, you can see it's shut down. So I'll have to turn it on again. So I've restarted the phone here. As you can see, if I press and hold on this, it loads up JBack Taskman. Now I haven't found a way to disable automatic startup of JBack Taskman, so either uninstall it or just close it when you boot up the phone, I guess. I don't know. But there we go. We've closed it there. So if I guess I'll open virtual key again. I haven't actually tried using or remapping the keys. I don't know how it works in Engage yet actually, but I'll figure it out at some point. This is just to show that they work. So if I go back up to Engage, open the keyboard. So if I open the game again, as you can see, it says Star Wars exited with an error. And as you can see, the error is called kernexec 3. So the reason for this is that this phone is hacked, and if I go to ROM patcher, you'll see I have multiple patches. So I have, well, the patches I have enabled are the install server, which lets you install unsigned apps, and then open for all, which allows you to access the phone's like hidden folders and files in the phone. So for some reason Engage doesn't let you do that, so you have to disable that to disable access to hidden directories in the phone, and then go back to Engage and open the game. And as you can see, a bit of waiting. There we go. As you can see, we've loaded it. Those two buttons there are soft keys, left soft key and right soft key. So, and this game only, this emulator only works in landscape as well. So I guess it must upscale it to fit the screen, because that is like 480 by 640. I don't really know. Yeah, it probably is. Yeah. Because that would be 3x4 resolution, which is also 240 by 320, so that must be 360 by 640. Yeah. Which is interesting. As you can see, so I'm not sure if these soft keys will work. I don't think they do, but the arrow keys definitely work. And then you can't use touch either. Touch doesn't work. So I can't remember the config, but like the game definitely works. I haven't actually played it yet, but it works as I've just shown you. Obviously there is a config for the keys, but yeah, that's Engage. So, and I'll show other apps because this one works fine. There are a couple that don't work actually. I might show them if I quit. So out of the ones I've tried anyway, I've tried Tetris, won't even work on my N95 8GB. It just shows like a little like cursor. But yeah, it exits with an error. So if I show you Snake, as you can see, it loads like two with the same screen. It's pink as well, so I guess that just doesn't work with this resolution. As you can see, I mean, you can still play the game, but it's just, I don't know, might be really awkward. So anyway, yes, that's emulation done. So that's, I love this phone because it's just so capable in most regards, and it's also good looking as well, so it's a really good all-rounder. other than like the slow UI, I guess. Really, I can't really fault it. It's a great phone, and that's why it's one of my favorites. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.
Okay.